morning, everybody. Welcome to our Attitude Festival session. This session, we're going to be exploring your life after AAT. My name is Ben Bullman. I am a tutor and a director at FI, and you will see I've got my contact details there on the screen. Please feel free to contact me if you need any help, advice, and guidance on anything AAT related, particularly anything we're going to cover in this session. As always, we are doing this session in front of a live Zoom audience. So they will have questions for me in the chat box, hopefully, as we go along. And I will try to cover as many of those as possible during our session together this morning. We've diarised, I think, about 45 minutes for the session. So we should be able to cover everything off and have ample time for you to ask any questions during or at the end of a little presentation that I've put together. I thought I would do it based around common questions. So I have been teaching AAT and then qualifications beyond AAT for a number of years now. And it's very common for me to chat to AAT students about what might be some of the follow-on qualifications they would go on and study after they've completed their AAT. And so over the years, I've got used to almost doing standard emails back, answering the questions that come up year in, year out from different students. And I thought for this morning's session, it would be useful for me to just go over some of the most common, frequently asked questions I get. As I say, the live guys with me, if you've got your own questions, please feel free to throw them into the chat box. If you're watching the recording and you've got questions, I put my contact details at the start of the session. I'll also put them at the end. I'm always more than happy for students to email me with any questions around what are options or follow-on courses post AAT. The first question I normally get asked is, should I finish AAT? I am partway through, maybe I'm at level 3. Should I go on and complete the rest of level 3 and level 4? Or if I've seen follow-on qualifications, should I potentially enter those earlier and not complete AAT? Unequivocally, I say yes, finish AAT. If you have started AAT, I personally think it's very important for you to finish it. And there are a couple of very good reasons that I will give you for that. The first one is the AAT. Once you've completed level 4, you will have your full AAT qualification. That's a very well-respected, well-regarded qualification and gives you something that is complete to put on your CV. If you are looking for career development, maybe you are looking for progression in your own job role, or you're going to be applying for other roles, I personally think it looks very, very good to have MAAT complete on your CV. And if you've already started AAT, that will be the quickest route to getting a full, complete, recognized qualification. And the other flip side is, even when you do go on to the more higher level chartered qualifications we're going to talk about at this morning's session, you will be able to get exemptions having completed level 4. Now, we'll talk a bit about those exemptions as we go through this morning. So first question I get asked, should I stick with AAT or should I jump and go and start one of the other qualifications earlier? My advice on the whole is stick with AAT, complete your full AAT qualification and get that very credible and recognized certificate that you can then use as a springboard potentially into other qualifications. Second question I get asked a lot, I've just finished my AAT. Ben, I've finished my AAT, the synoptic results come through, I've completed all of the units, I've got my certificate. Should I now take a break? Because I've been studying for a few years now. It's taken over my life and it is very involved, professional accounting study. Should I take a break before I think about moving on to another qualification? Now, that one probably more personal and circumstantial, depending on your own circumstances and position at the time of your life that you are making this decision. But on the whole, my advice would be don't wait too long. I have seen students that have finished AAT with the intention of going on to do CIMA, ACCA, ICAEW, some other qualifications, but have said, I'm just going to have a break. I'm going to have, and it usually starts with, Ben, I'm going to have 3 months, 6 months off. And that 3 months, 6 months can very quickly develop into a year, 2 years, potentially even longer. That risks losing the good habits you will have built up. We try to get students into good habits with AAT, studying in their own time, setting study plans and goals, doing mock assessments, and getting on top of sitting the modular style of assessments that we have now in our professional world of qualifications. Also makes it much harder to find the time, because if you have a break, what you're going to do is start filling the time you currently study with other things. And as much as that's great, and I really don't want to downplay the importance of balance in everybody's lives between work, potentially, study life, social life, and other pastimes, the more other things you bring into your life, the harder it will then be to go back to finding time to study. And the final point is you have spent lots of time learning and developing your knowledge to pass the AAT assessments. And in all of the qualifications I'm going to talk about this morning, that knowledge gets developed and built on. So the longer you wait, the more you risk your knowledge going out of date, being forgotten, because lots of the units you would then go on to study will actually take concepts, theories, calculations you've seen at AAT, maybe add a bit more to them, but it's a very good bedrock and building block. I'm just going to keep an eye on the chat box as we're going through. Exactly right. I can see some comments in the chat box. It's harder to get back into learning, and that's exactly it. You will finish AAT, and yeah, it's natural, I think, to say, I just need to reset. Take a week off, a couple of weeks off, a month off, that's absolutely fine. But the longer you leave it, I promise you, the harder it will be to study. I remember I studied AAT myself, and then I went straight on and I actually did the ACCA qualification post AAT, one of the ones we're going to talk about this morning. But even when I'd finished my ACCA, I thought, what am I going to now do? And I had aspirations of going on and doing other exams. I dabbled with the thought of doing some advanced tax exams beyond. I thought about learning Spanish and taking a Spanish course. And actually, I didn't. I had a break. And I've never picked up those higher level tax units. I've never picked up my Spanish course. And you just get out of the good habits of study. Next question then, what are my choices? Well, at first intuition, we have got 3 qualifications that is a usual route for students to follow after AAT. All of them are what we call chartered designated qualifications. So they all come with a chartered status. You'll see the 3 logos at the bottom of the screen, and we'll talk through each of these in a bit more detail in a moment. But we've got CIMA, the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants. We've got the ACCA, the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants. And we've got the ICAEW, the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales. If you are based up in Scotland, there is a chartered accountancy Scottish affiliated awarding body as well. They all meet the criteria for government mapping with the standardization of study to the level 7 grade of qualification. And so not to underestimate the level that would cover, once you have completed these, they are seen as the equivalent to a master's degree. Let's have a look at them in a bit more detail. So the first one I've picked here is CIMA, the Chartered Institute of Management Accounting. CIMA, very broad qualification. Although it's got accountant in the title, I think it's a wider qualification than the other 2 I'm going to talk about. Combines finance and business knowledge, as it says there on the screen. Really looks at taking financial accounting skills centrally, but putting them in the much wider role of business partnering. We often hear it referred to these days. So a business partner, that means, yes, you've got financial awareness and financial skills, but you would partner those skills with other areas of an organization. So it might get you to explore the concepts of marketing, but very much thinking, well, how can a financially aware person assist a marketing team, or assist a sales team, or assist an inventory procurement management system, or maybe develop the IT infrastructure and software within the organization. Potentially might reflect on the HR, the human resources elements, but very much linking back to the finances of recruitment, selection, paying people. Predominantly it is studied by students that work in industry. So when I say industry, they work within a business organization. They're not external accountants coming in. They are people that work within the finance or the business partnering offices of a company organization. But also, and increasingly, we see CIMA students coming to us from the public sector. Lots of demand there for students that work maybe in the NHS, in lots of school and education settings, if they are within the finance teams there, but want a wider management, organizational, business knowledge. A very, very nice qualification, and I'll talk a bit more about the entry into it from AAT and the exam structure in a moment. The second option and qualification I wanted to talk about this morning that we run courses for at FI is the ACCA. Very, very, very common qualification, brand themselves as the global awarding body for accounting students. So we've got students sitting ACCA exams the week after next in early June, but there will be students around the world sitting those same exams. They have got study in Malaysia, in the Far East, in Australia, in all parts of the world. Very much focus on what I call compliance side of accounting. So you will do individual modules and exams in areas such as audit, in financial reporting, so preparing year-end and statutory accounts. There is a mandatory at least one exam in taxation. And it really is a mix and a blend of students that we see doing this one. We've got students that study from practice firms, so they work for firms of accountants. But we also have a number of students who work internally, but maybe more internally in a direct accounting department within an organization. So they are much more involved within that organization's compliance side, maybe doing their tax reporting or doing their statutory accounts preparation work. And also the public sector. We see this one still as very popular in the National Health Service. So lots of NHS, and I actually ran an event with the ACCA and the NHS in partnership earlier this year at the start of 2021. The other thing that does distinguish the ACCA slightly is, at the moment, they are the only one of these three awarding bodies that are affiliated with a degree program. And this is something that lots of students find very attractive. If you have not been to university, you maybe did AAT when you left school or later on in your career. If you study the ACCA, you are given the choice to also sign up for a partnership agreement they have got, where, as well as getting your ACCA qualification, you will get a degree in accounting. And I would encourage you, if you're interested in that, to go and check out the ACCA website, because there's lots of details about the two degree programs they offer in conjunction. The third qualification I was going to talk about this morning is the ICAEW. As I said earlier, there is an equivalent qualification for anyone listening to me in Scotland. The ICAEW, although it says England and Wales, or Scotland if you do the Scottish equivalent in the title, it is a very recognised qualification around the world. Please don't think this one would exclude you from then going travelling and using your qualification to open career opportunities in anywhere in the world. These are very well valued. Primarily studied by students in practice. So primarily the ICAEW has been used by students who work for practice firms of accountants in their accounts preparation departments, maybe in their taxation departments, in their audit departments. But you don't have to. We are starting to see students from other industry sectors using the ICAEW. So we have had a number in the last year that have signed up for courses with us that don't work for firms of accountants, that do hold those more internal roles within organizations. but the focus very much on compliance and business advisory work. So advising clients or businesses on their options around taxation, what their legal requirements are for reporting, and understanding the external audit environment of coming in and reviewing and giving an opinion on someone's external accounts. I'm just going to pause there for a second before we go on and talk about exemptions, just to get a flavour in the chat box. So as I said earlier, I've got some live students with me this morning. Has anybody got a preference at this stage? Has anybody done their own research or homework? Just interesting to gauge the opinion. We've got well over 30 students at the session logged in this morning. Anyone thought about a choice of any of those three, or interested to hear of any other qualifications that you guys have seen post AAT? Oh, we've got a couple of votes for ACCA coming in. Fantastic. Got someone saying CIMA. A few more ACCAs or a couple more CIMA. Brilliant. And I think now more so than ever, when we get this choice of, well, which of the three would best suit me, I think although there are clearly similarities between all of them, currently, I would say there is more that distinguishes each of the three than there has been for many, many years. There are subtle differences now. Some of the things I've talked about already, but some of them we'll go on to talk about for the rest of the session. One thing I just wanted to say at this pause is, please don't feel I am by any way underestimating the importance of the AAT qualification. This is not me saying these qualifications are better than AAT. They are just suitable for a development potentially in your career. But we do have lots of students that work very, very hard and gain their AAT qualification and say, that's as far as I want to go. But we just like to explain the options, and increasingly we see many, many students that do now use the AAT as this springboard. Very, very good grounding the AAT has given them, but take that knowledge, experience, and the good skills and habits they've developed into one of these further qualifications. Perfect. Right, so exemptions. Exemptions is probably the next thing I get emailed about. Ben, help me, I've done my AAT, I'm looking at one of the other qualifications and they're mentioning exemptions. What should I do? What would I qualify for? Exemptions mean exams that you won't have to take because you've already covered that learning and demonstrated it with passing some of the AAT modules. Now, you claim these directly from the awarding body. So I or my colleagues at First Intuition or other training providers can't grant you these exemptions. You have to get them approved and claim them directly from ACCA, CIMA or ICAEW. And you would normally do that when you register. In advance of registration, because it always feels a bit of a chicken and egg scenario when I'm talking to students in this position, the awarding bodies are pretty good these days at giving you a very good indication of which exemptions you would get. And as an AAT student, certainly an AAT student that has finished and completed level 4, that the mapping of exemptions is very, very clear. Just to caveat, this is obviously at risk of change at some point in the future. As far as we are aware, the Quals 22 new syllabus, which is coming in 2022, will not directly affect these exemptions, but I'm not 100% sure that the awarding bodies, ACCA, ICAEW, CIMA, have completely finished what they have to do to map across the equivalents. But this is definitely the situation for the current syllabus, and our big expectation is it would be the same or very, very similar for Quals 2022. There are some potential costs. So you may have to pay CIMA, ACCA or ICAEW for those exemptions, but quite often they have got offers on. At the moment, for example, I don't believe that ACCA or CIMA would charge you for those exemptions, but that again is liable to change. So very much make sure you ask that question at the point you are considering registering with the awarding body that you're going to go on and study next. With level 4, so if you have completed your AAT level 4, you will see joining ACCA, you get 3 exemptions. The same 3, you get exempted from their first 3, what they now call the knowledge level. There is a paper on general accounting awareness and management information systems. There is a unit on management accounting, and there is a unit on financial accounting. And you would be exempted from those first 3 units that you don't need to then study and sit the exams for. You can jump straight into the next level, and we'll talk about that in a moment. For CIMA, you get 4 exemptions. So you're exempted from what CIMA call their certificate level. At the certificate level now, there is a unit on economics. There is a unit on management accounting. There is a unit on financial accounting, and there is a unit on ethics and legal frameworks that all have been covered in AAT Level 4. So you get a mapped across exemption. And then finally, ICAEW, which is the one that probably is the most confusing, because this one does have some variations in it. For ACCA and CIMA, it does not matter which optional units you've chosen at your Level 4. For those of you that are studying Level 4 currently or have looked into it, at AAT Level 4, there are mandatory units that you do, but you will also pick 2 or more options from a choice of 5. And ACCA and CIMA, it does not matter. You get the same exemptions no matter which optional units you've done. For ICAEW, it is different. The maximum number of exemptions you can get at ICAEW, their first level, the certificate level, is 5 exemptions. But that does depend on which optional units you have done. The main reason for that is the optional units in taxation. So if you do personal tax and business tax at AAT Level 4, that would give you an exemption from the ICAEW Principles of Tax unit. If you also do the external audit optional unit at AAT, that would give you an exemption from the assurance unit at ICAEW. The other 3 exemptions are standard as long as you've got your Level 4, but it's those 2 that are varying depending on the options. And so something that we've worked with on students that have shown an interest in ICAEW, or maybe their employers have said after AAT, that's the route we'd like you to take. We have encouraged students at AAT to voluntarily do 3 optional units. It is quite common for our students to do personal tax, business tax, and also do the external audit. The AAT will let you sit all 3 of those assessments. However, you only needed 2 of them to get your full Level 4 MAAT certificate. But doing those 3 options will get you the maximum exemptions when you go on to ICAEW. I also worry slightly that on that one, if you were looking at your choices, you would think, well, surely ICAEW is the best route for me because I'm going to get more exemptions. And everybody likes the thought of not having to sit exams. And yes, I would agree with you to the point of exemptions are great, but also think about the number of exams you've got to go on and study beyond. Because as you'll see, when we go and look at the exams left post AAT after claiming those exemptions, sometimes claiming more exemptions might mean you've still got more exams left to do. Let's have a look. So how many exams? The next question I get, brilliant, Ben, I'm going to claim all of my exemptions, but how many exams now do I still have to sit to get fully qualified with the awarding body that I have chosen? CIMA, at the moment, if you go into CIMA having claimed the 4 exemptions, so you've completed AAT Level 4, you've claimed your 4 exemptions, you would still have 12 exams left to go. Now, 12 exams seems like a lot, doesn't it? But the style of the CIMA exams is very different to the other 2 awarding bodies. So CIMA, beyond your certificate exemption, there are 3 additional levels. You would have to study at the operational level, then you would progress to what they call the management or managerial level, and then you would go on to the strategic level. And at each level, there are 3 computer-based on-demand exam modules. So those units can be sat at any time, and CIMA currently and will continue to offer those exams as remotely invigilated. So you can sit those exams anytime from anywhere. Now, you can do those 3 at the level in any order, but you have to complete all 3 of these CBAs, computer-based exams, before you move on to the case study at that level. And you have to complete that before you then move on to the next level, and it just keeps working its way up in the same format. The computer-based exams, at the moment, they brand them as an E unit, an F unit, and a P unit. Now, the P unit covers more traditional management accounting theory. The E unit covers more financial accounting theory. Sorry, the F unit does. And the E unit covers more people management theory, although there are subtleties within the qualification. I think the most important thing I would be noting on that screen is the nature of those CBAs for CIMA. They are 60 questions, short answer, marked by the computer. So if you like the idea of getting your results, I would go CIMA because you get your results much quicker. It's a bit more like an AAT Level 3 exam with that in mind. The letters, Laura, in the chat box are E. So the E stream, the E1, E2, E3 through those 3 levels. E covers more people management skills. The F unit, F1, F2, F3 at the 3 levels cover more financial reporting. And the P unit, P1, P2, P3 covers more management accounting. And all of those exams, so the 3 CBAs at each level, are all the same format. 60 questions, short answer, and you get your result pretty much straight away. The only thing you have to wait for then are the case studies. So to complete each level, you then have to sit a case study. The case studies are only held once a quarter. So they hold the case studies for CIMA in February, in May, in August, and in November. And there are a few days, a bit like a synoptic window at AAT really, where you can book your slot. The case studies are where you get more written tasks. So that's where all of the typed responses come. They're still computer-based, but you type your answers. They are written explaining concepts, more practical in nature of the questions. All of the exams, just to reconfirm this, are available remotely. So for all of the CIMA exams, you've currently and will continue to have a choice. You can either go to a physical exam venue, and they use the Pearson VUE exam centres all over the UK, or you can sit your exams from home. And that has been trialled throughout COVID, but CIMA have said they've been so pleased with it that they're going to continue to offer those exams post any COVID restrictions. CIMA exams will continue to be available remotely. So you can sit them from home, you can sit them from the office. And yet, thank you in the chat box, you do the exams one at a time. So you study a module, sit the exam, move on. And you can do those 3 CBA modules in any order across the E, the F, or the P. Any questions around CIMA in the chat box before I move on? There was a bit of interest there in the chat box for CIMA. Very, very well recognised and regarded qualification, but I'll be saying that about the other 2 as well. I think the big differentiator at the moment is the CBA on-demand nature and the remotely invigilated ability to do that. Drawbacks to CIMA, that's interesting, Laura. So I've said all the positives, haven't I? I suppose the drawback I see the most is the flexible nature. And that sounds daft because I big them up for the flexibility, but the flexibility can also be a curse because the exams are on demand, very much puts the onus on the students to decide when they sit their exams. And if you're someone that's very disciplined, very dedicated, and you're going to get your exam slots booked promptly, you will be fine for CIMA. But I do see it where sometimes CIMA students, because they haven't got a fixed exam sitting, they let their exam booking slide and kind of roll it forward a bit, which can really delay their progression. Costs in a moment, Darren. Costs do vary a lot. I'll give you an indication of costs, but that's where there are so many factors involved in that one that's more worth an individual chat with me or one of my colleagues when you're ready to think practically how we're going to fund this and finance it. One final question from Laura in the chat box. If I've got CIMA certificate and want to move to ACCA, do you get exemptions? Yeah, something to bear in mind. All of the three awarding bodies that I've talked about, as well as having exemption mapping from AAT going on, have mappings across. So we don't advocate it, and we don't recommend you plan to do this. But if for whatever reason your circumstances change and halfway through CIMA you wanted to move across to ACCA or ICAEW or vice versa, you would get credit for the prior units that you'd passed if the equivalent unit mapped across to the other qualification. Perfect. Perfect. I don't think CIMA limits your options for the future. And we actually have seen a bit of an uptick in people at practice firms now doing CIMA. If they're involved more in business management and doing management accounts and going in for that relationship with a business, almost a kind of outsourced financial controller role that lots of external accountants now provide, CIMA could be a very attractive option for that. Perfect. Let's have a look at ACCA. So ACCA, 10 exams for ACCA. So that's the first headline to grab. You've got less exams to sit if you go to ACCA as opposed to CIMA, but the exams are different in their format and different in their scheduling. So you would claim exemption from the first 3 units at what they call their knowledge level, which means you would come in here at the skills level. And at the skills level, there are separate exams and modules to study in law, in performance management accounting, in taxation, in financial reporting, in audit and assurance, and in financial management. You can do those units in any order. The law unit is on demand. So the law unit exam you can sit on demand, and that one the ACCA do offer as a remote invigilated option. But for the other exams, you would have to book an exam slot at their fixed exam sitting. So the ACCA run their exams 4 times a year. They have got an exam sitting in March, they've got one in June, they've got one in September, and they've got one in December. And you have to be very, very rigorous in booking your exam slots. So for example, the next exams we've got ACCA coming up are the 2nd week of June. The students to book their exam slot had to book by the 26th of April. There's a very structured approach to booking an exam and then sitting at the next slot. Most students these days would study 1 exam module a quarter, although traditionally students used to do 2 exams at 2 points a year, simultaneously an exam on a Monday, maybe, and another exam in a different subject on a Wednesday, for argument's sake. Very much depends on how you study best and what your employer would like to do by way of time that you're studying versus time that you are maybe more involved at work. Once you've done the skills level, you then move into their professional. So the final level is professional. Bit like AAT, this one at level 4, there are 2 compulsory papers. Every student has to do SBR and SBL, strategic business reporting, so more financial reporting there, and business leadership is the BL in SBL. And then, although you could do your options first, you can do these in any order, a bit like AAT level 4, you then pick 2 optional papers. So you can then specialize in advanced taxation, in advanced audit, in advanced financial management, and or an advanced performance management unit. They're all computer based, so you still go to an exam venue and sit a computer exam, but they are externally marked. So there are elements in those exams that are written tasks, that are show your working tasks, as well as a few short answer questions as well. But all of the exams, so when the students have finished their exams in June, the exam scripts get uploaded to the ACCA. They are externally marked by the ACCA, and results are all released on the same day for the students for that sitting. So the results will be released middle of July, and ACCA results currently all come out on early hours of a Monday morning. Just going to pause and see if I've got some questions in the chat box. So the dates are fixed for ACCA exams. Yes, they are, Laura. Apart from the law exam, which is the only one that you would have left to do on demand, you would only be able to sit your exams at either the March sitting, the June sitting, the September sitting, the December sitting, which sounds restrictive. But equally, I would argue the positive of that is it gives you a very definitive, that's when I'm sitting my exam. So it prioritizes booking exam and working towards that fixed slot. Would you say the ACCA is the option of the majority students choose? Rebecca, no. It does very, very much spread out our student base. We have good ACCA numbers, but we've seen lots of students using ICAEW and CIMA in recent years, and I would say it's quite a broad split these days. How long does it take to do each of the qualifications, Laura? It varies because you can do more exams together to speed up a bit, but I would say for all of the awarding bodies, I would be looking at anywhere from 2.5 to maybe 3 years post AAT. Might be able to do it slightly quicker. Some students might take slightly longer than that. And there are ways that you could speed up a bit by, as I say, doing 2 exams at the same sitting maybe. But I would be budgeting in time for 2.5 to 3 years. So yeah, Laura, completely different to CIMA now with having fixed dates for the exams. That's right, completely different. Final one we're going to talk about is ICAEW. So if you've got your level 4 AAT qualification, you have got 10 ICAEW exams left to do. So certificate level, you are exempt from, and that's the one where it does depend on the optional units, but no level 4 student is exempt from law. So you would always have to do at least one of their certificate level exams post AAT. And that exam is on demand. So that one, similar to the ACCA law unit, you could study it and you could sit the exam at any time. And that's available remotely, as well as going to a physical centre when you book a slot. From then on, you have got 6 exams at their professional stage. And very, very similar to ACCA, they are what we call session fixed sitting exams, only running for a date in March, a date in June, a date in September, and a date in December. Equally, you can do 1 exam a quarter. Increasingly, we see the trend with ICAEW students that they maybe do 2 exams in a sitting and then have a whole sitting off. That opens up the question about resits and something else you need to factor in. Not nice to think about failing exams, but for both ACCA and ICAEW, if you fail an exam, let's say you are unlucky enough to sit an exam in June, get your result in July, you failed it, your next available slot to sit it would be September or then December. And so it does delay your study potentially waiting for a resit slot. Obviously, the on-demand nature of the exams, once you've got your result, you can resit as soon as you feel you are ready to. Once you've done the 6 professional exams, you've then got the 3 final advanced stage exams. They are only held twice yearly. So there is a sitting in July and a sitting in November. You can do all 3 exams together, but you don't have to now. You can spread them out. So a lot of students maybe do 2 exams in one sitting with their final case study in the following sitting. All the exams are computer-based, but again, like the ACCA exams, apart from the certificate level, the other ones have got written elements or calculations where you show your workings on the screen that are marked by external markers. And so you expect to get your result. Everybody gets their results on the same day. ICAEW results come out on a Friday, and usually it's around 6 to 8 weeks after the exam sitting, but all students get their results on the same day. Will I find the study hard? Now, that's such a tough question when I'm asked it, because it really, really does vary. All I would say, to give you some reassurance, the exams are tough. I don't want anybody to go into these qualifications without thinking these exams are hard. They are some of the most technical exams you could possibly do in your life. But in part to compensate that, the pass mark requirements are slightly lower. So you'll be using your AAT studies to be thinking 70% is the level of competency I am aiming for in an exam. It varies for these qualifications. ACCA is 50%. 50% is the pass mark in an ACCA exam. Most of ICAEW exams are 55%, although the final exams, it does come down to 50%. For CIMA, all of their exams are scored out of 150 marks, and you need 100 marks out of 150. So all of them are slightly lower in a pass mark requirement than an AAT exam. The modules tend to be much bigger. That's the next observation when students move on from AAT. The study modules for all of these qualifications seem to be bigger than the equivalent AAT module. And you will see that by the size of your study folder potentially. But I have to say, and this is the real positive for you guys, I teach lots of students. Some have not done AAT, maybe they've been to university or come straight into these qualifications. AAT students perform very, very well in all of their follow-on professional exams, because AAT has given you what I believe is the best grounding in knowledge of double entry, in accounting, in financial systems and structures. And you will be very, very well placed to take that knowledge and really have that embedded understanding of what they are asking you to do at the higher level qualifications. In the chat box, is it a bigger jump than level 3 to level 4? It's about the same. I would say it's about the same step up, because we do hear lots of students notice that jump from 3 to 4. I would say it's probably a similar jump again. Okay. Do I need a relevant job role? In theory, yes, you do. You don't need a job in accounting and finance to register with ACCA and CIMA. You can register as a student and start studying. But to get your qualification with ACCA and CIMA, you will need to also produce what they call 3 years of practical workplace evidence. Now, that's recorded as what they call PER on their online platform. The 3 years does not start when you sign up with ACCA or CIMA. So the good news is, if you've already been working in a financial role, having studied AAT, you can use that time to qualify for the 3 years. So lots of AAT students are really well placed if you've been doing it in conjunction with a job role to say, I've already got lots of that 3 years of experience there. I just need to now go and document it. If it's part-time, Laura, you have to then pro-rata it. So depending on your part-time hours, you would have to scale that up for the full-time equivalent. So you would need longer part-time experience in length to make up the 3 year equivalent of the full-time. ICAEW is slightly different. So ICAEW, you do need to be on what they call a standard formal training contract, which means your employer needs to have registered. For ACCA and CIMA, your employer does not. They can do, but your employer does not need to be registered for you to study and get your PER. For ICAEW, they do. It's all evidenced online, Vicky. So there is a standard when you register for the professional qualification, you get a link to their website with a login, and on there will be a place for you to record your practical experience. So you would document your career history, who you've worked for, between what times, and then there are particular areas where you have to document, how have I shown ethics in my job role, how have I shown leadership and management, and you will see there are a series of questions really that you answer and type an answer to. Rebecca in the chat box, if you've worked in accounting and studied for 3 years, by the time you're ready to move on, you would qualify for that 3 years. Yeah, you just have to go back and get your evidence written up and approved by someone at work to say, yes, this is what you've done. I've written a number of blogs and do sessions on the PER requirements. So if you go on to do ACCA CIMA, get in touch with me and I can hook you up with the next session I'm running on that. Can I study under an apprenticeship? Yes, you can. All 3 of the qualifications we've talked about this morning have been mapped to level 7. You would need to do that in conjunction with the support of your employer, though, and a job role that qualifies for the apprenticeship scheme. But the good news is, go back to work and say they could qualify for up to 21,000 of funding towards you studying those qualifications as an apprenticeship. If you're funding it yourself, and I appreciate lots of students fund their AAT studies themselves, if you go on to do ICAEW, ACCA, CIMA funding yourself, costs vary. And this is what I said earlier. It's hard to give you a definitive. I usually budget for around 12,000. It is not cheap to study these, but it does depend on your study options, whether you study online or come to classes. Students tend to book unit by unit. So instead of booking a whole level, and we do offer some of the qualifications where you can get a whole level, but quite often if you're funding yourself, you spread the cost by just paying exam module by exam module. But if your employer is interested in you gaining this qualification, I would go back and talk to them about any funding they would maybe make available to you if they are not going to entertain doing it under the apprenticeship. Where can you find more? Well, go and speak to your colleagues, speak to people at work, and check out the websites. I've put links here, but go and Google CIMA, ACCA, and ICAEW. You will find great resources and information on their own website. But also go and check out First Intuition. We've got courses for all of them, both online and classroom. You get access to all of our online resources for any of the courses that you book with us. We write all of our own study material. So if you've used our AAT study material, we also write our own material for these qualifications. The tutors are all qualified with practical experience. And on our website, there is a really, really nice program that talks through each of the qualifications. I'm just going to pause for a few final questions in the chat box. So a few questions that have come through. Which route would I recommend for management accounting? Well, all of the qualifications touch on areas of management accounting. I think traditionally people would have said CIMA, but actually I can see a role now for ACCA and ICAEW accountants in management, although it does get you to do exams more in the applied areas of tax and audit, which you might say is not that relevant. If I'm working in accounting, can you still do any of the qualifications without prior work experience? You can start the qualifications, Darren, but you wouldn't get the certificate until you demonstrated your 3 years. So you just need to be careful there that you don't start spending money on study, meaning I can't get the certificate. It's kind of a bit chicken and egg again there, but most students wouldn't go much further than a couple of modules before getting a job role to start working at that PER alongside. Do you need to work somewhere where they are ACCA and CIMA? For the PER to be signed off, CIMA, no. ACCA does require another ACCA accountant to approve your practical experience. So if you've not got someone at work, there are ways that you can get someone externally to still sign it off, but that's getting quite technical, Sarah. If you're interested in that, drop me an email and I can hook you up with ACCA about their roles. Laura, if you've been made redundant, that's really, really sorry. I'm sad to hear that. If you're coming to the end of your AAT, would you start CIMA or would you wait? I suppose if you've got time on your hands, it wouldn't hurt to start CIMA, but I do appreciate that's incurring your own costs. And as I say, you're not going to get qualified until you've got that job role. It might not look bad, though, if you said on your CV, I've self-funded to start the first module of CIMA to see how it goes. And certainly you can sit the exam without the job role. So you could use this time maybe to get a couple of the exams under your belt. Perfect. Yeah, fingers crossed, Laura. The issue is you then need 3 years of experience. But obviously you could use your old role. You just need someone from that role to sign it off and approve it. We have sadly run out of time for today's session, so I'm going to end the recording by saying thank you so much for joining.